So let me welcome you all here to another one of the Danby Community Council programs that we've been presenting by Zoom as a substitute for in-person programs that we have during normal times. Um, a couple of, call them technical and administrative things. Let me ask folks who are not the presenters to turn your video off. And if you do that, and then you can use your cursor or whatever tool you have. And if you position yourself over any one of the black video squares with people's names, there's three dots. And if you go to the three dots, you can check an option that says hide non-video participants. And voila, all of a sudden the presenters, which is, well, me for a moment, and then the one labeled Claire over there, will become the biggest things on your screen. And it would be nice knowing everyone seems to have learned the protocol by now, but it'd be nice if you keep your audio turned off unless you have questions, and try not to interrupt too badly. But if you have questions, do them during the, go right ahead and ask. Better to get them answered right away. Let me tell you that these programs are brought to you by the Danby Community Council. We get funding for programs. This isn't a concert, but from the Community Arts Partnership and United Way. This is a family program. United Way does support family programs. And of course, the town of Danby. Speaking of future programs, next week, same time, same place. And you can bring your own snacks, your own roses, chocolates, cherries, whatever it is. We're having a special Valentine's Day concert. And it's with a gentleman named Dennis Wing. He's a guitar player of excellent qualities. And we said, look, it's Valentine's Day. And so he said, okay, I will do virtual love songs. Now, does that mean that we're talking about love songs through a virtual medium, or love songs things that virtually could be love songs if they weren't something else? We're not quite sure, but we are sure he's going to be pretty entertaining. And we look forward to seeing you there. Meanwhile, if we can all settle down, and let me ask the two remaining folks who are on the screen to turn off your video so that we get a big screen. Oh, there goes one. And that leaves, I can do it for you, but it's easier if you do it. Let's see. There we are. Now that leaves just the two of us. Okay, so in the other window that's not me, and I'm going to disappear in a moment, I'd like to tell you who we have here. These are students from the Cornell Raptor program up at Cornell University. And I think we're looking at Maya right now, but we also have Kelsey, Claire, and Ariella. And let me see what this list is. It says we're going to have a broad-winged hawk. We're going to have a merlin, an eastern screech owl, and a barred owl, which is not somebody who sings old traditional melodies. It's barred as in behind bars, the bars on the eyes. And with that, let me turn it over to Maya, even though it says Claire. And please enjoy yourselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us today. My name is Maya, and I am a junior at Cornell University in the Cornell Raptor program. So I'm going to give you an introduction about the program. So this program actually originally started as the Peregrine Fund, which was a project that was dedicated to helping to preserve and raise the population of peregrine falcons, which were affected heavily by DDT use in the mid 20th century. And that program eventually evolved into the Cornell Raptor program here at Cornell University. And in the past, we did a lot of breeding and conservation work with many different species of mostly local birds of prey, so here in the Northeast. But now we have moved to focus more on education and public outreach. And we are a home for non-releasable birds of prey. Every bird has a different story, but they all cannot survive in the wild by themselves, either because of injury or because they're imprinted, which means that they were hatched in captivity and are too used to humans, so they would not be able to survive in the wild by themselves. So we are organized by undergraduate students here at Cornell University. And this is, I believe, one of the only places in the United States where there is a Raptor program that undergraduate students run. Most places are required that you're a vet student of some kind. So very unique. All of our members are very passionate and dedicated to the care of our birds. So after I leave here, we will present our 4 birds, and then Claire will give you a short tour of our facilities, and we will give a weight demonstration of how we weigh the birds and to a bit about how we care for them and the things that need to be done on a regular basis so that they remain in good health. All right, thank you everyone. And now here is Ariella.
Great. Hi everyone. So I'm another volunteer here at the Cornell Raptor program. My name is Ariella. And this is Ash. So Ash is a broad-winged hawk. So hawks are one of the most stereotypical raptors that we have around. So the characteristics of a raptor, which is also known as a bird of prey, is they have a hooked beak, they have talons that they use to kill their prey, and they have very good eyesight. So hawks fall into all those categories. They kill with their feet. They have extremely good eyesight in order to track their prey. But there are 2 different types of hawks, so 2 different subgroups. So we have the buteos, which are the soaring hawks, and then we have the accipiters, which are the forest hawks. So buteos are the hawks that you tend to see around here. That would be like the red-tailed hawk and the broad-winged hawk, which is what Ash is. So these guys tend to soar around, and you'll see them flying in circles, usually overhead in usually open areas, and they tend to hunt mammals. So some of the characteristics they have that defines them as something different than an accipiter is they have very strong feet and very thick toes in order to more easily grasp mammals. They also have very fan-like wings and fan-shaped tails in order to soar more easily. So accipiters would be like a Cooper's hawk and the sharp-shinned hawks, and those guys tend to have very thin, long toes, almost like a falcon. And they also have rounded wings and long runner-like tails so that they can easily move through forests and hunt birds. So unfortunately, we do not have any zippers that we're going to show you guys today. They tend not to do that well in captivity just because they're better at moving around in the wild, while buteos tend to have a sit and wait kind of pattern to life. So they'll sit and wait for their prey to come, and it makes it easier for them to have them in captivity because they don't need to move around that much. So anyway, you guys may have not seen a broad-winged hawk before, and that's most likely because they, despite being a buteo, they do tend to live on the edges of the forest, and they tend to stay out of eyesight of humans. And also, they are only native to this area during migration. So you'd really only see them either during the fall or the spring. And when they migrate, they're very easily spotted though, because they tend to migrate in kettles, which are these massive groups of birds. It's up to 10,000 birds. And they all migrate together when they go down south. But broad-winged hawks are one of the smaller buteos that we have around. So unlike the red-tailed hawk, which has a wingspan about 4 feet, these guys have a wingspan about 3 feet, sometimes 2.5. That is the whistle call that you would hear from a broad-winged hawk. So she hasn't eaten yet, so that's why she's just hungry. But broad-winged hawks tend to live on the edge of the forest, like I said, and they like to be near water as well, because these guys, even though they're kind of generalists about what they hunt, they like to eat amphibians, and they also like to eat small mammals. But frogs are just a favorite of theirs, so they like to be near wet areas. So if you're near a lake or a river, you might see them. Although when they're migrating, they tend to go near coast because they like to hunt shorebirds. So broad-winged hawks will often be found in like northern Canada during the summer and during breeding season, which is usually about May. And then when they migrate down south, they usually tend to go to South America and also Latin America, but usually the northernmost parts of South America. And they will usually stay in the canopies of rainforests, and they usually stay in one area. So they'll find an area away from other broad-winged hawks because they migrated together, and they'll usually stay within that area and not move around very much. So they're rather lazy birds most of the year, except when they're migrating, because when they're migrating, they'll actually move 70 miles a day. And in order to do that, they usually rely on different migration tactics. So these guys are actually like masters of migration. So while they're flying, they usually tend to go only over mainland. So they usually tend not to go over water. And this is a characteristic of many UDOs if they migrate, because they like to use mountain updrafts as well as wind currents and thermals that are usually only over the land in order to make their migration easier and to use less energy. So these guys will actually migrate about a month earlier than the raptors, so you can usually see them in September. Oh, sorry, yes, I will speak more slowly. So they use the mountain updrafts and also the wind currents in order to use less energy for migration. And because they only use the land to travel, they'll actually go from North America into Latin America, and it would look like a giant river of raptors above your head. And it's insane. It's also known as a tornado of raptors, but it's a really cool sight. And if you guys do ever want to see them, you can see them in Hawk Mountain in September, around September 15th in September. And you'll see like this giant just group of them. And they'll actually also migrate with other birds like turkey vultures and Swainson's hawks. Yeah, so also when they nest, like a lot of UDOs, they can sometimes be monogamous, which means that they have a mate for life. And although they're a little bit different because sometimes they will choose to change their mate every year. And when they are getting ready for nesting, they'll find an area and they'll take about 2 weeks to build their nest. So they put a lot of effort into building their nest, while a lot of other types of birds will just steal nests from other birds. So then they build usually nests usually on the outskirts of forests, and they'll be usually in a tall part of the trees. And then once nesting season is over, they usually do not see their mate again until the next year. So Ash came to us in about 2017, and she was young when she was found, so she was under a year. She was most likely a fledgling. So those are birds that are just learning how to fly. So she was found in a Lego in someone's backyard, and we don't know exactly what happened to her, but she had lacerations in her eyes, and she also ended up having some neurological issues. So she can't see very well, and she sometimes has just issues with coordination and eye shape. Sorry, that's her next test coming out. But yeah, so she's staying with us because she cannot survive on her own. She wouldn't see well enough to get her prey. So a lot of the time when we feed her here, we'll actually have to tap for food in order to get her attention. Right. So we usually tend to do questions at the end, but if anyone wants to ask like one question before we move on to the next bird, that would be okay.
Where's Hawk Mountain?
Hawk Mountain's in Pennsylvania, so there are like, it's about like 2 hours away from here in Ithaca, but it's like a massive site for bird watching during the fall during migration, and you can see a lot of really cool birds there. Like, golden eagles will migrate over there too. We do have some areas like here that you can go to. I'm not exactly sure of the places, but I have seen golden eagles here before too. I haven't seen a broadwing hawk yet in Ithaca.
How how does the broad-winged hawk compare in size to a red-tail that we see so often around here?
So they're about half as tall. So these guys are only about 1 to 1.5 feet, and red tails can be about like 2 feet to 2.5 feet tall. And like I said, their wingspan is about 3 feet, which is a foot less than a red-tailed hawk. They're also just a lot like more petite. So red-tailed hawks tend to have like very thick toes and very thick legs and just thicker bodies in general. And these guys usually tend to be only a pound at most, and they're usually about like 0.8 pounds. She's about 370 grams.
And what
then,
do you feed her?
So she gets fed a mix of mice, stock, and quail, and she also gets vitamin Vita-Hawk, which is a vitamin that gives them essential nutrients for them. But yeah. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next bird, and then we can take more questions at the end. Right.
Hello. So my name is Claire, and this here is Amelia. So Amelia is one of our 2 female Merlins here at the Raptor program, and she is in a completely different taxonomic group from Ash, who you just saw, because Merlins are actually a type of falcon. So falcons, in contrast to hawks, falcons to be much more compact. They can be pretty like densely built, and they have very sleek, streamlined bodies and tapered wings, which help to reduce the drag while they're flying, which make them very, very fast flyers and extremely agile in the air. So falcons, compared to hawks, which, as Ariel was saying, the Buteo hawks have kind of a sit and wait style of hunting, where they'll just wait to find prey and they'll soar in circles, and they eat mostly mammals. By contrast, falcons tend to specialize in other birds, and they tend to catch their prey on the wing in a very intense kind of aerial, agile hunting style. Also, other characteristic features of falcons, besides their sleek, streamlined body and tapered wings, are that they have in their nostrils, it might be a little too small to see on the screen, but they have little bones in their nostrils which help to break up the airflow, which allows them to keep breathing when they're flying at such high speeds. And they also, on their beaks, they have a notch. Might also be hard to see on here because it's so small, but they have a notch on their beak, which is called the toenail tooth. And this notch, this tooth, is used to sever the spines of the birds that they catch. So that helps to sever the spine and really make sure that their prey is dead. But like other raptors, they do primarily kill their prey with their feet. So to that end, they also have very sharp talons, and they have very long, skinny toes. You can see she has very, very long, skinny toes, and this helps falcons to grasp their prey through the feathers. Birds like the hawks that, like Ash, you just saw, hawks tend to have more shorter and stronger toes to grasp mammals, whereas falcons tend to have very long, thin toes because the birds that they hunt have a very thick layer of feathers, so they need to be able to grab through the layer of feathers in order to hold on to their prey.
So those are some of the characteristics of falcons. Amelia here is specifically a merlin. Merlins are one of the smaller species of falcon, but actually not the smallest. She's about half of a pound, and males tend to be a little bit smaller than females. And this is significantly smaller than peregrine falcons, which you may have heard about or seen before, especially if you were here at the last Raptor program that we did, where we showed a peregrine falcon. So those are a lot bigger. Merlins are like half their size, or even smaller, third of their size. However, there are other falcons that are smaller, such as kestrels are even smaller, and also not in North America, but some other places there are tiny little pygmy falcons and falconets that are really cute and small. So despite their small size though, they're very, very fierce hunters. And they will go after pretty much any other kind of songbird that they can find, songbird, or sometimes they'll go after shorebirds like plovers, sandpipers, any other kind of bird that they can find. Occasionally, merlins will also hunt large insects such as dragonflies as a supplemental food source. And sometimes they'll also hunt bats. And so their preferred food source is these animals that they can catch on the wing, but occasionally they will also eat small mammals or small reptiles, especially if they're having trouble finding enough food otherwise. So they are able to generalize their diet and branch out sometimes. But most of the time they're hunting birds and other animals on the wing. And to do this, they actually have a really interesting hunting style. Most falcons, such as the peregrine falcon, will do what is called a stoop, which is a very sharp, steep dive. So it'll soar up to a really tall height and then basically fold their wings and just drop like a rock onto their prey and catch it that way and really take it by surprise. Merlins tend to do almost the complete opposite of that. They'll actually be sneaky and come up from underneath. So this surprises their prey, and then they'll be able to chase it for a short while and catch it. So very, very agile flyers and good at hunting this way. Another interesting feature about their hunting is that merlin pairs have been observed to cooperate when they're hunting. So sometimes one bird will flush out the prey, and then the other bird in the pair will come in and grab a prey and kill it. So it's super cool because most other raptors are very solitary, wouldn't do this, but merlins have been observed hunting cooperatively, especially when they're hunting a large flock of birds, such as waxwings, which tend to group up in flocks of dozens of birds. So having a partner to flush out some prey can be really helpful. So in terms of where they live, they tend to go for semi-open areas. They like having open space to chase their prey through, but they do need trees to nest in as well. So I'll go for kind of like the edges of woods or an area with a few trees, but not too many. And for their nest, unlike the broad-winged hawk who you just saw, merlins will not make their own nest. They'll actually steal a nest from another bird and then lay their eggs in there. They do tend to be monogamous, like most raptors. They'll keep one mate. However, they do sometimes change their mate from one breeding season to the next. So they'll stay with one mate throughout the whole breeding season, but then next year might find someone new. They also do tend to migrate. So during the breeding season, they'll be up north. They're actually found, they're one of the raptors that's found not just in North America, but also in Eurasia. So during the breeding season, they'll be in Canada or Scandinavia or Russia, kind of like these northern latitudes, and then they'll migrate south to southern United States, Mexico, southern Europe when they're during the winter, and then return the next year to breed again. So they're not too common around here because they do come through here on migrations, and sometimes will nest here, but they're more common a little further north. But we do have some resident Merlins who live here, and I have actually seen a Merlin pair breeding in Ithaca, so that was a really cool experience. However, another fact about them is that they tend to be very vocal, especially during the breeding season. They tend to have this really sharp, shrill scream that they do a lot, which you heard in the other room while I was taking her out of her transport box. And yeah, so during the breeding season, they make this scream all day. So the pair that was nesting in my neighborhood last year in Ithaca, I could hear them a lot throughout the day, which could get annoying because they're very, very loud. But I love them. They're really beautiful birds. Yeah, one more cool fact about Merlins is that they're really popular in falconry, and especially in the past, in kind of medieval times, they were really popular, especially among women who did falconry. So they were called a ladies falcon, and a lot of famous women such as Mary Queen of Scots used them to hunt skylarks. And I think they were considered kind of a more delicate and ladylike bird than some of the other popular falconry birds, which are larger. So yeah, so Amelia here, she came to us in 2018 when she was less than a year old. She was still in juvenile plumage, so she is only 3 years old. So she's a youngster, and like many of the birds who come to us, we didn't know exactly why, like how she got hurt, but she had a right wing injury, which didn't fully heal, so she can't fly very strongly, and that's why she can't survive in the wild. But she is very happy with us, and yeah, she's a very sweet bird. And if anyone has any questions about Amelia, feel free to ask them in the chat or.
Do Merlins migrate as well as?
What was that?
Do Merlins migrate?
Yes, Merlins do migrate. Yeah, some populations, especially in the Pacific Northwest, might not migrate because the winters are mild enough there. But most populations do migrate. So they'll go like from Canada down to Mexico or Texas or those areas.
Two questions. How long do they live? And also, what are the actual mechanics of hunting from underneath? How do they grab their prey because their feet are underneath?
Right, so how long they live? I believe the oldest recorded Merlin in the wild was
at least 11 years old. So that was a bird that was captured and banded by researchers, and then they found that same bird 11 years later, and it was still alive. So it was at least 11, but likely a little bit older than that. So they could live, especially in captivity, they could live a bit longer than that, maybe 15 years. So that's approximately their lifespan. And then second question was about hunting. So, well, when they're hunting from below, so they tend to kind of go from below and then fly upwards to surprise their prey. And that's kind of a sneak attack because not many other raptors will hunt from below. So that helps them to surprise their prey and get close to it. But they don't actually, since as you point out, their feet are underneath them, they don't actually like grab their prey from below. They'll usually, after sneaking up on it, they'll have to do like a short chase before just kind of grabbing with their feet out in front. Yeah.
Which raptor is the one that's most likely to come to bird feeders to hunt the little birds?
So the ones that are most likely, or the ones that I've personally seen at bird feeders a lot, are Cooper's hawks, which we do not have one to show you today, unfortunately. But Cooper's hawks are a type of accipiter hawk that they like to hunt small birds a lot, and they really like suburban areas, so they'll often go to bird feeders. Merlins tend to be a little more like, I don't know, maybe just less bold than Cooper's hawks. I just haven't seen them at feeders before, but yeah. I'm gonna go and let the next presenter come out with an eastern screech owl, who's our next species that we're showing you. So, thank you.
All right, so hi everyone. My name is Kelsey, and this is Odin. He is an eastern screech owl. So we're moving on to our owls now, and these guys are a little bit different than most other raptors. They have a lot of different adaptations, and that is primarily because they are nocturnal. So one adaptation they have that really helps them is they have very, very good eyesight. So it's kind of tricky to see with Odin here, but they have very large eyes. So if you actually put your hand in a fist and hold it up to your head, that's how large your eyes would be if you were an owl. So they can see really, really well in very low light conditions. And the trade-off for that is they can't really see colors as well, so they pretty much mostly see in black and white. But that's okay for them because they don't really need to see colors very much. It's more important for them to be able to see in the light and dark. So they also have really good hearing. So one interesting fact about owls is that some species will have asymmetrical ears. So the ear will be higher up on one side of the head than the other side. So it's kind of like if you've ever seen a dog tilt its head, that's kind of what it's doing. It's trying to get a better idea of where that sound is coming from by putting its ears in different positions. So whereas hawks are kind of built for soaring and falcons are built to fly very quickly, owls are built to fly silently. So they have very soft feathers. Their feathers kind of have a serrated edge, and there's almost no sound at all when they fly. So the softness of their feathers kind of helps to muffle that sound and sneak up on their prey very effectively. So one other interesting fact about owls is that with other raptors like hawks and falcons, they have 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back. And so owls actually have two toes in the front, one in the back, and then their last toe can swivel around to the front or the back. So that's called zygodactylus, and it helps to give them kind of a better grip on whatever prey they're trying to catch. So for eastern screech owls, you can see here they're pretty small. They're one of the smaller owl species in North America, and they're very, very well camouflaged. So because they're so small, they have a lot of predators like bigger owls like barred owls and great horned owls will hunt them, and some terrestrial animals like badgers and foxes and weasels and those kinds of animals will hunt them and their young owls. So they need to be able to camouflage very well to hide from those predators. And one way they do that is by having this nice gray spotted, like kind of banded coloration. Looks very much like tree bark. So what they do when they see a predator is they'll just kind of sit very still against the trunk of the tree and just try to blend in. And so you'll notice Odin here has some very prominent ear tufts. So the ear tufts kind of help with that as well. So what those do is they kind of break up the shape of the owl when they're standing against a tree. So a predator looking at them wouldn't see like the shape of a bird sitting on a tree. So it helps them camouflage. So one interesting fact about eastern screech owls is that there are two different color morphs. You have a gray color morph, which you see here, and then you have the red color morph, which is a lot more orange, reddish, brownish in color than the gray color morph. And they're the same species. It's kind of basically like having two different hair colors. And then the gray color morph is actually a little bit more common than the red. So these guys are not too picky about what they eat. They'll eat a wide variety of invertebrates, like insects and worms and that kind of thing. They also go after small rodents like chipmunks, squirrels, mice, rats, those kinds of things. And probably even go after some smaller snakes and birds as well. So contrary to what you might think, the screech owl actually does not screech. We think that their name might have been confused with the barn owl, whose call sounds a lot more like a screech. So these guys make kind of what's known as like a purring or a whistling sound. Some people think that it sounds a little bit like a horse whinny. So it's surprising. They are native to the mostly eastern part of the United States, and they're non-migratory, so they stay there all year round. And they tend to live mainly in forested areas. They don't really nest, they just kind of look for tree holes or like nest boxes that people will put out for them. And they actually are pretty receptive to living in suburban areas. It's actually pretty good for them because there aren't as many predators there, but there are definitely lots of small animals like mice and rats that they can hunt for food. So this here is Odin, and he, as you can kind of see, he only has one eye, so he's missing his right eye, and also has an injury to his right wing. So for that reason, he can't be released into the wild because he can't really see or fly well enough to be able to hunt for food. So we're not sure exactly what happened to him, but we suspect that he may have been hit by a car and then was lucky enough to be found by someone and brought into a rehabilitator. So once he was found to be non-releasable by that rehabilitator, he came to us to be an education bird. So if anyone has any questions about screech owls, feel free to ask. I'll take one or two questions, and then we'll go on to our last bird.
I have a question about their feathers. I guess I was wondering, you said that these guys don't migrate. And I was just wondering if, would you say that the raptors that live in this area throughout the winter, would they have like an extra underlayer of feathers or some kind of like extra insulation, like extra insulating down feathers rather than the ones that might want to escape this area in the winter?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know for sure about like different layers of feathers, but I imagine like birds that live farther up north probably have more insulation in the form of feathers or body fat or something like that that helps them keep a little bit warmer in those colder areas.
How do owls find enough to eat during the winter when there's a lot of snow cover?
Yeah, it can be tricky for them. I guess they kind of sometimes it's they might not have as much food in the wintertime, but you know, their prey animals will also have to come out to look for food and eat. So they'll probably find them that way. And they're pretty well adapted to surviving through the winter and finding enough food through the winter, especially if they're a species that kind of lives up north, like the snowy owl or the great horned owl.
Perhaps they can hear mice under the snow like red foxes can.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and switch to our last bird, which is a barred owl. Again, everyone. This here is Luna, and she is a barred owl, spelled B-A-R-R-E-D. Not to be confused with the barn owl, which is B-A-R-N. Sometimes when I say barred owl, people mistake it for barn owl, but no, they are two different species. Barred owls are named for the vertical barring on their chest feathers, as you can see. There aren't really any color variations within the species, although some individuals will have lighter or darker colors. So mostly they just look like this. Now, barred owls, they are native all along the east coast of the United States, going all the way from here in Ithaca down to the swamps and marshes of Florida and very southern United States. So they have a very broad range because they are a very hardy species. They can tolerate many different temperatures, they can live in many different habitats. They also have a wide variety of foods that they eat. And this is actually becoming a problem because their range has actually been expanding, maybe with climate change a little bit, into Canada and also into the Western United States. And in these areas, they're considered invasive. And in the Pacific Northwest, like in Oregon, there is another species of owl native to that area called the spotted owl. And they are much smaller and less aggressive than these guys, the barred owls. So the barred owls have been taking the smaller spotted owls out of their nests and using those nests for themselves. And that's presenting a problem for conservationists. So that is something to be aware about. But other than that, barred owls, they like very heavily wooded areas because these areas with like very old trees tend to have more tree hollows where they like to nest. Barred owls also really like to make use of nest boxes. So if you have a pretty large backyard that's maybe in a not so urban area, you can set up a nest box. You can look up how to make them online. They don't need to be very big, maybe about 2 feet tall, 2 feet wide, and maybe you'll get a pair of barred owls that'll come and nest there. They are one of the species that like to really make use of human-made nest boxes. And if you're lucky, you might get a pair that nest in there. They are also very territorial and easy to hear after the sun sets. They have a very distinct call that
maybe those of you that like to do a lot of camping or backpacking and stuff like that have heard before. They're called, people like to describe it as who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? I'll try to do a demo. It's like who, 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 who. And the last note is like much longer than all the other ones. They are very territorial and will come and check out other animals and people that may approach their nest. And they, during the breeding season, they are monogamous like most other species of raptors, and they will lay up to 5 eggs in their nests that are pretty small and round and pure white colored. And after about 4 to 5 weeks, those eggs will hatch into little baby barred owls. And after about another month, they will fledge or take flight from that nest, and they will leave their parents. Now, barred owls, like I said before, they hunt a variety of different things. They are not very picky about what they eat, but mostly things that'll be out at nighttime, since they are nocturnal. So mostly small mammals, mice, rats, but they are also known to go for amphibians, frogs, maybe snakes. And they're also known to sometimes like to nest near bodies of water where they can sometimes be seen fishing at night, which must be a very cool sight to see. You know, you can see Luna here has very dark eyes compared to some other owl species that you might see around. She's not turning towards the camera right now, but that suggests, one of the theories for owl eye color is that the eye color reflects what time of day or night they are most active or hunting. So Luna has very dark colored eyes, so that suggests that maybe she will be most active in the middle of the night. So those dark pigments help absorb more light, any light from the moon or anything to help her pick out her prey while she is sleeping. You can see she also has very feathered talons, unlike hawks and falcons. And that is probably another adaptation that allows owls to fly silently. So when they like swoop down and catch their prey, maybe those feathers on their feet help break up some of the air currents that would otherwise make noise and alert their prey of their presence. So Luna here, she is about 17 or 18 years old. We got her in 2003. She came to us and she is missing her left wing right here on this side. Now, a lot of owls, especially, will have these wing injuries that if they are found in time, to save them, they need to be amputated. And I think what happens is that they get hit by a lot of cars at nighttime. So sometimes, especially along roadsides, people litter out their car window, and that will create food and all kinds of like chances for mice and rodents, prey of owls, to come at night. So owls will oftentimes be hunting nearby roadsides, and that makes them more susceptible to being hit by cars. When they are very focused in on catching a mouse that's on the other side of the road, maybe they won't see a car coming and they'll get hit like that way. But yeah, are there any questions about barred owls or owls in general?
Can you talk about their vertebrae? Don't they have extra vertebrae in their necks? Is that right?
Yes, so owls have 7 extra vertebrae in their necks than humans. And that, so all birds can turn their head 180 degrees around. So on either side, 180 this way and 180 that way. But owls can actually go 270 degrees. So not all the way around, but they can go an extra 90 degrees around. And then on either side as well. So they can't turn all the way around, but almost. They can cover the entire area around themselves by turning their heads, which is very cool.
Is she in good health?
She is in very good health. So barred owls usually live to their early 20s, and she's about 17 now. She has had some eye issues in the past, but they are all resolved now. And she is one of our 3 barred owls. We have a male Oscar and another female Buddy. And Buddy and Luna have taken to each other. They are best friends. Buddy is missing the opposite wing, her right wing, so they like to sit together with their injured sides side by side, and they form like one big owl if they stick out the wing that they do have. Yeah.
Do you get the people at the vet school, or they take care of your raptors?
So if we have any medical emergencies or issues, there is the Cornell Wildlife Health Center, which is operated by the Cornell Vet School. And we will take them there, and they know about us. We are in regular communication all the time.
And what does she get fed?
So she usually eats mice, little white mice. We try to give them a variety. Sometimes we will feed our owls, the ones that will eat them, day-old chicks, so little baby chickens. And once in a while, one time we got a big donation of like frozen bowls. So yeah, mostly small mammals.
So if I get any frozen voles, I can bring them to you.
Yeah, that would be great. They do have to be like euthanized in a certain way, I believe.
Oh, they can't just be dead.
No, you can't just fry them in the side of the road.
Well, I used to have a couple of jumping mice in the freezer that my cat had caught and killed.
Oh wow.
So I think we finally cleared the freezer out.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Claire again. This is Kelsey again. So yes, as Maya was saying, we like to give our birds a variety of food, like voles and mice and chicken, but yeah, have to make sure that it's like doesn't have any potential toxins in it, or contaminants. So that's why we try to get our meat from like sources that have euthanized it and stuff. But anyway, so Kelsey and I are here in our main building. So I'm gonna turn the camera around and show you around a little bit. So here's our main kind of kitchen food prep area. So we have a big sink. We have individual food dishes for the birds. And we have kind of these dishes that have sections so that if on our daily feeding rounds, we can put portions for each bird in their section. They have their names on them. So that makes things very efficient. We have like a scale to weigh out portions, scissors and knives for cutting up the meat, plastic gloves, of course. Here's a sheet where we keep track of the portions, scale. This is someone mentioned before, on certain days we sprinkle VitaHawk on the food, which is a nutritional supplement that gives the birds more vitamins. Fridge for bird food. Here's our kind of main just administrative area. So we have desks with a lot of files, paperwork, computers. Yeah, we have perches and things. And we have leashes. Now we'll go back into where the aviaries are, and show you kind of how we take care of the birds. So here we have a lot of transport boxes. These are kind of just lightweight boxes. They're dark inside because most raptors tend to calm down when it's dark out, and they tend to sort of settle down a little bit. So it has like a perch and newspaper and like air vents, of course. So that's how we transport them. And then here's a hallway with aviaries on either side, where the birds live. And so do you want to do, okay, so Kelsey is going to demonstrate taking out one of our red-tailed hawks. So this is her aviary. She has perches and a water bowl. So right now Kelsey is putting jesses on the bird so that this is the part that you hold on to.
Now that I have her jesses, we use what we call a swivel to kind of connect the two jesses. And then, so this bottom ring goes through the holes in the jesses. A little bit tricky to do sometimes with just one hand. So it goes just like that. And then that kind of leaves a loop at the end that I can slip the leash through. And then, cool.
So that's how we generally get our birds out of their rooms when we do things like present them to people or do health checks or anything. So now what Kelsey is doing is weighing her. So we have this scale that has a perch on it. So basically we just get the bird to step onto the perch and then we can read the number on the scale. And yeah, so weight is a pretty good basic measure of how the bird is doing, because a lot of times if the bird is suddenly losing a lot of weight, then that's a good indication that the bird might be sick, because it might be like losing its appetite, or just not not in good health. But on the other hand, it's not good for the birds to be too heavy. If they have too much of a buildup of fat, it can also cause health problems. So we want to make sure that we keep them right in the perfect weight zone. So weighing them is a good way to get a number. And another thing you can do is feel the keel bone, which is the bone that goes right down the middle of the bird's ribs. And we kind of have these scales that show if it feels like there's a lot of fat on the bird's breast, then that might be an indication that the bird is overweight. But then if you can't feel any fat on the bird's breast, then that bird is dangerously thin. So you want the bird to just have a nice weight that's right in the middle of that good zone, and to not be too fat or too thin. Yeah, so I realized that it is 4. So if anyone needs to go, don't feel like you have to stay, but we can stay for a couple more minutes because we were planning to also show some of the gear that we use to take care of our birds. But yeah, I just wanted to give that disclaimer. But so here on this table, we've laid out a lot of the gear that we use. So basically, I'll go back to the bird. On the bird's legs, you can see that the bird has those dark brown leather anklets that go right around the leg. And then those anklets have a loop on them that the jesses go through. And then the jesses are attached to the leash. So over here, we basically make those anklets out of strips of leather. And we have, we can make different size anklets for depending on the size of the bird. Something really huge would be like for an eagle. And then something on the smaller side would be for like the merlin or eastern screech owl, perhaps. So we make those out of leather and then use these grommets to kind of hold them together. So it's like an anklet that can go around the bird's legs. And then for the jesses, we have 2 different kinds of jesses. You can either make jesses out of leather. So that's kind of this long leather strip that has like a knot at one end. And then at the other end, there would be like a hole. That's how you connect it to the leash. And again, these can be like small or large. The other kind of jesses is made out of paracord. So this is kind of a more modern style, and it's really useful because paracord is very strong. And so just like the leather ones, the paracord jess would have a knot at one end and then like a loop at the other. So moving on from that, other gear that we use with our birds, like I mentioned before, the birds kind of like when it's dark out and it calms them down. So for a lot of procedures that we have to do, or different checkups, or if we're gonna trim their beak or trim their talons, we would put a hood on the bird. So again, we have different sizes from a pretty large hood down to like a really tiny hood. So that goes over their eyes, and the bird's beak would go out this hole. And then that would calm them down, because They just think that it's dark out. And then other gear that we use to restrain birds, we have wraps, again, large or small, depending on what bird. So you can just kind of put a bird inside and then wrap the bird up with this Velcro, and that keeps its wings pinned against its sides so that it doesn't, flap its wings and hurt itself while you're trying to do the procedure. Towels, gloves, of course, because the birds have really sharp talons, whenever you're handling them, you have to wear leather gloves to make sure you don't get hurt. And then over here, we have a few of the items that we use when we're doing beak and talon trims. So we trim the birds' beaks and talons just to make sure that they don't get overgrown, because that can be kind of dangerous to them. If their beaks get really long, it can be hard for them to eat. And if their talons get too long, they could get stuck on things or like maybe cut themselves. And normally in the wild, they would be perching on a lot of different materials, like different kinds of wood, or on the ground or on stone or whatever. And this would kind of wear their talons down. And meanwhile, their beaks would get worn down by kind of picking at things, like picking at the bones when they're eating or things like that. But it can be hard to give them enough variety of perching in captivity. We cover their perches in turf, which is like this on this scale perch. This turf is a good material for them to sit on, but it still is a good idea to trim their beaks and talons occasionally to make sure they don't get too overgrown. So for that, we have clippers, which we would use on the talons or occasionally on the very tip of the beak, just to cut some of the length off. And then we have a Dremel here, which we use mostly on the beak to kind of shape it and kind of smooth the sides while also shaping it and kind of taking a little length off. And then for the Dremel, it'll have different tips depending on your needs. And then we have a file to, again, smooth everything down and make sure it's just in a good smooth condition, no jagged edges or anything. We also might have different like grease products like a bag balm or a Just Grease, which on the leather makes the leather really nice and supple, but we can also put kind of a balm on their feet, which can, like, if their feet are sore or cracked or anything, it can just soothe their feet and is a good easy fix to make sure that their feet stay healthy. And then we have an egg carton here. We sometimes make enrichment items for them. So we would take something like an egg carton or maybe like a cardboard like carton thing that had vegetables in it. And then you can like kind of put strips of newspaper and pieces of meat in it and stuff. And then the birds enjoy tearing it apart to get the meat out. And it's enriching for them. So yeah, that's a bit of the things that we use to take care of them. And here, so you can hear one of the birds calling in the next aviary over. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions.
Yes, I do. Doesn't the noise of the Dremel tool bother them?
Yeah, so the Dremel tool does bother them, especially if you're using it on their beak, it's, you know, it's on their head, it's close by, it's annoying to them. But that's why, part of why we use the hood and the wrap to calm them down and keep them restrained so that they won't, you know, hurt themselves. And we just try to do it as quickly and smoothly as possible and just get it over with quickly so that, you know, they don't have to be bothered by that noise for longer than they need to be.
There's also a question in the chat from somebody. The question is, do barred owl populations displace great horned owl populations?
Oh, sorry for not seeing that earlier in the chat, but yeah, barred owl populations aren't really interfering with great horned owl populations to my knowledge. Great horned owls are bigger than barred owls and are kind of top of the food chain birds themselves, and they I think like barred owls are a little too big for them to actually eat, but they're very like fierce hunters at the top of the food chain, so the barred owls aren't really aggressive enough to displace the great horned owls, to my knowledge. Both of them are doing pretty well and are pretty widespread in Eastern North America.
I have a couple of questions. One, you talked about those two barred owls that had the wings removed, and you said they do like to sit near each other. So are there some of the birds that you do house in that same, I don't know,
Yes.
same rooms?
If
Or is
you're,
it not
yeah,
safe to leave, like, you know, to alone? Like, do they like that companionship, and can you allow for that?
right. So most of our birds are in individual aviaries by themselves because most raptors are very solitary and don't really like a lot of companionship. So the barred owls are kind of an exception. We, with any birds that we get, we have to like kind of see how they interact with the others and how if they like being with others. So most of the birds don't really want to be with others, but the barred owls seem to like it. Buddy and Luna seem to be very close and they like sitting next to each other. So we keep them together. We also, we actually have the Eastern screech owls separated now, but we used to have our Eastern screech owls in an aviary together. And they tolerated each other, but we noticed that sometimes one of the screech owls would eat more of the food that we left in there, and then the other screech owls kind of wouldn't get as much, and so that would be an example of a reason we would separate them. So that's why they're in different rooms now, just to make sure that one doesn't like hog all the food. But yeah, so some birds can tolerate being with others. Other birds would really not like that and might even attack the other birds. So that's why almost all of our birds are in individual private rooms.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead. We have some questions. Go ahead.
How often do you feed them?
Great question. So we feed them once a day. For small birds, we feed them just once a day. For large birds, we feed them once a day for 6 days a week. But then we have one day that's called a fast day where they don't eat. And so this is because in the wild, their eating schedule would be pretty unpredictable and would be just based on when they can manage to hunt and kill a prey item. So in the wild, they might not be able to catch something every day. So that's why we just feed them once a day, or even only 6 days a week.
Do you have any great horned owls?
We do. We have 2 great horned owls currently. One is a female who is very old. Her name is Gertrude. She's very old and has been with us for a long time. And the other one we just got this summer. So he's newer, and yeah, they're good birds.
Do you have a way to get the birds exercise?
For exercise, so for some of the birds that are able to fly, which many of our birds are not able to fly due to their injuries, but for the ones that can fly, some of our members of our program, like each each person in the program will have kind of one bird who they hand feed and they work with more than the others. So this would be if a person is working with a bird, they can take that bird out on, it's called a creance leash, which is a very, very long, thin leash. And you can train the bird so that it will fly back and forth from your glove to a perch on this creance leash. And that's a really good way to give the birds that can fly exercise. For the other birds, I mean, they are in rooms that are have plenty of space for them to, you know, fly around a little bit or walk around if they can't fly. So they just do that. Sadly, for some of our birds that have wing amputations or are just really can't fly, there's not a lot of ways to get them exercise. But.
What is it that's calling in the background there? What is that?
So the one that's calling, maybe I can show. It's one of our Harris's hawks. She is, there she is. She's an imprinted Harris's hawk. Her name is Kevin, because, well, we used to think that she was a male, but then found out that she was a female. But so she can be somewhat aggressive and needy. So, oops. Yeah, so sorry about that. She's making a lot of noise. Yeah, maybe if there's like one more question, I can take that, and then I think we all have to put the birds away and feed them and stuff and get going. But if there's one more question, is there anything?
Looks quiet, so I'll ask a trivia question. If any of you are movie buffs, the movie My Cousin Vinny features a very loud owl. Was that a screech owl or a barn owl? Sounded like a crying infant, actually. Anybody have any idea? And it was very small.
Have any of you seen that movie, My Cousin Vinny? Nope. I haven't seen it, but if it sounded like a crying infant, I would guess a barn owl, because they make really ungodly shrieking noises, and it does sound like a crying infant. So maybe that, but I haven't seen the movie. I'm sorry.
Well, do enjoy it sometime. Let me say thank you, folks. You can all unmute and make your hand clapping noises. Let me thank Ariella and Claire and Kelsey and
Thank
Maya.
you very much.
for doing this. We had a great time here.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And, we hope we'll do it again, maybe not next week, but maybe in about another year or so. And meanwhile, those of you who are here, don't forget we have a concert next Sunday, 3 p.m. You can find it the same way at danbcc.org. There'll be a banner there with a link to it. Dennis Wing is going to be giving us Valentine's virtual love songs. And if you bring a couple of the birds, maybe they'll respond. You never know.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming,
Thank you.
folks.
And thanks to you, Ted, for helping to organize these.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
Thanks.
was great.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
This was
Bye-bye.
amazing.